G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. If you're a bit like me and you think financial planning is either for people that have made it or we're talking about stiffs in suits, then you're in the right spot. Today we're gonna throw that on its head a little bit because we've got a really, really good financial planner. When I'm talking good, I'm talking about an awesome dude. I'm talking best in breed, but I'm also talking about someone that's really switched on as well. James Millard from Insufficient Funds. Welcome on. How you doing?
Thank you so much, Aaron. Doing really well, mate. I've got my button-up shirts. I'm really bucking my own trend here, unfortunately.
I think we're swapped the tyres, mate. That's for sure. To get you into a button-up shirt, mate, I'll tell you what, it's
you've done incredibly well.
Thank you. Had nothing to do with the fact that you're on Channel 7, but anyway. Mate, you're fresh off releasing a book, and we'll go there in a second. We've had the privilege of knowing each other for quite some time.
Yeah.
I feel like we've got fairly similar-ish businesses in the fact that, you know, we're husband and wife teams. We're built off family ethos. We're really trying to, you know, big on family values as well, team values. I think heart's in the right place from your business and trying to help people.
Very much. I mean, it feels like we're talking every time we catch up, we're speaking the same language. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think we're going to have – and every time so if you tune to the podcast with all our guests beforehand, I'll do what I call a briefing call. So just making sure that we've, you know, got the right questions answered. And in our briefing call, I reckon we went nearly the whole distance on a podcast itself. I was like, we got to repeat this all over again.
Like we booked 10 minutes, Aaron, but we, you know, sometimes it's hard to stop, right?
Oh, mate, this is it. I think when you get good guests on that know what they're doing, but also – you just come from a place of like care, and that shows up, right? And having gone through the book writing process myself, it really just forces you to look in the mirror and go, what I truly stand for, I'm going to put my name to a book, which means I need to have utter conviction in what I'm putting out there as well. And it really forces you to go deep on what you stand for and actually what your business truly delivers, right?
Isn't it challenging though, that black and white nature of putting something in writing when everything in your head sounds so good and then you start to write it out and you're like, wow, I need to be better at this.
Yeah.
And it forces you through it, but it's what an exercise, right?
Absolutely.
And I mean, thankfully really good for the businesses, absolutely.
Yeah. So your new book's come out. Tell us a little bit more about the lead up to it, the writing process, and now going through a launch process as well.
So the lead up was a very, very long burn.
Yeah.
I started blogging in 2018 with the vision of, okay, I'll just fill the chapters of the book. Someone gave me that horrendous advice and said, just imagine the chapters of the book and write one blog at a time.
Yeah.
And I wrote 50,000 words in blogs, but nothing joined together. And so that wasn't a waste of time, but ultimately then we started a family, we did a bunch of other things, and the book just got put completely on hold. So the real push for the book was about a year and a half. And so we really dragged it out. And then we were thankful that Wiley managed to pick it up. We were really grateful for that opportunity, and they helped us hone it, bring it together, and now where we are is finally launched it about a week ago.
Congratulations, mate. Sufficient Funds.
Yeah, so
the book and the business.
Sufficient Funds, the business, Insufficient Funds, the book, and really Insufficient Funds being how do we get you to the other end of that continuum.
I love the ethos, mate, and I think there's an undertone to the book, and I've kind of picked up and read about what you're doing as well. We're living, so when you currently look at where we are, state of play at the moment, for majority of families, no one's really thriving in the sense, you know, rates have gone up, cost of living's gone up through the roof, for example. So there is a feeling that like paycheck to paycheck, you have this insufficient funds is one. What I personally, and people may have heard me say, state of wallet equals state of mind. So when you have insufficient funds, you feel like you come from this place of scarcity. And most people are on fairly good incomes that you and I come across. And when they say they don't have much left over, we're scratching our heads going, how does this happen? You're on good incomes. Where's it gone?
That's it. And I mean, insufficient funds can show up in all sorts of different ways, right? It doesn't have to be $0 on the bank account. We often say to brand new clients, like, no offense, but this is where you're at right now. But it's not because you've got no money, but it's just not coming together. Your money and your life aren't necessarily in sync. And I mean, like you say, with cost of living, rates going through the roof, way beyond what anyone thought they would 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It's put a lot of people in a very much a stressful position, a much more stressful position than they were. And that's forced us all to reevaluate, well, how much are we actually living? What do we need to do? Do we have to scale back? And, how far does this continue? Do we need to just dial back and hang for a second and just really tread water for a bit?
How far can you really dial it back, though? I mean, I've looked at our budget both on a business perspective and a personal perspective. When I say I've looked at it, Bernie showed me it. I've had to agree with it because she's a numbers person. But yeah, I've tried to go there I don't know, cut back on.
Food is one. It's hard,
cut back
though.
on dining out. There's no cafes on the weekend. We go there maybe for one banana bread for the kids. They can share that. And it's a coffee, but we're not having breakfasts out like we used to, for example.
That's the discretionary stuff, right?
Yes.
And so for us, I mean, we're looking at a client's budget, and I'd encourage anyone to write out your expenses, really think it through, map it out. But once you itemize things, you can start to look at, well, what is fun and what's boring? That's a really simple way of looking at it. The boring, often that can't move so much.
So you're talking fuel, groceries.
If you're talking food, it's groceries, maybe the takeaway because you're doing that because you're just dead tired, but it's not eating out. That's a choice, right? And so, the financials, the insurance, the rent, the mortgage, the utilities.
So cost of living, non-negotiable.
Cost of living. If you've got a pet, that's non-negotiable as well, right? You've got to feed everyone. But then you got your lifestyle side of things, and that's just the general fun, really. And it could be things like holidays. It could be presents, gifts. That's actually one of the most commonly overestimated items. Or underestimated, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the most commonly underestimated items in our clients' budgets is gifts.
Yeah.
And often we find it might be a couple might say, hey, we're spending about $1,500 on gifts, but actually it's not. It's actually right up about $5,000 or $6,000. And funnily enough, when you start to write it all out, you can see that all of a sudden, oh my gosh, we're actually giving a lot more. And great to be generous, but sometimes there's an opportunity there as well.
Yeah. So going through this exercise with people, are they generally surprised, or it reaffirms kind of what they this sinking feeling that they know that their money's just it's a bit like water and it's just seeping out through other parts?
Look, I mean, for most people, if they've gone through that process, they've written it all out, there's not much surprise.
Okay.
In general, I think everyone's like, look, it's tight. Things are pretty tight. And for when rates are dropping, and it might be a distant memory for most of us, but when rates are dropping, life's pretty good. You're not watching things as they were.
I think
right?
a few years ago, lifestyle was awesome.
Yeah.
When we were taught lowest interest rates and there was money in the bank, I was like, this is fun. And then the reality sets in. 13 rate rises. Maybe another one on the cards. Yeah, life is, you got to put the budget under the microscope.
So the budget. We start with the budget, and then we encourage people to think about, well, once you split out those expenses, start to really have a good look at your account structure, and can you structure your accounts in a way that it's not confusing, so you really clearly can see what you're spending on different areas.
Okay. So for someone that's not sure about what that means, what does that look like when they open their internet banking?
Yeah, so it's not just one bucket, right? And it's hard. I mean, a good mortgage broking advice, have an offset account, right? If you can, if you've got enough cash sitting around, it's going to be super valuable to do that. But if you can also get multiple offsets, or don't get too caught up in the benefit of an offset if there's not a lot sitting in there. I mean, if you think about it, 10 grand in an offset account saves you about $600 a year at current rates. And that's not a crazy amount of money if having a heap of money in one bucket is really confusing for you. And so, yes, we know there's lenders where you could get multiple offset accounts, but that's not necessarily the only option. And I guess having a good structure drives behavior. So it might be having a bills account where everything comes into, and then money on payday then flows into other accounts and up to that level that your budget is set on an average of that pay cycle. And so if you're spending 10 grand a year on holidays, maybe that's $800 a month, and that $800 every pay goes into your travel account.
Nice one.
And so things like that, you're saving as you go, and you can see, okay, well, holidays coming up, we've named it Japan, whatever it might be. It might not be Japan, it might be Mudgee at the moment, but that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're consciously saying, okay, we've saved a bucket, we're spending it, you're still able to reward yourself, hopefully. As long as you're not going backwards in that scenario, you can still have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is exactly how Bernie set it up. And she said, well, we used to have a cash flow for our household.
Nice.
that all stopped once the buckets came along. She's like,
Yeah.
yeah, everything's under control.
Yeah.
We can see what's going out where. And it's like, I think that really gets you back into the driver's seat as opposed to that reactionary mode. It puts you more into that proactive. We can see where things are going. We can control it as well.
Exactly. And if you fear what you don't know, or you just ignore it. And if it's confusing, you let it go, and all of a sudden, and there's things like credit cards. If you're spending on a credit card rather than just spending the cash that you have, it can be much harder to become conscious of it.
Do credit cards kill you? As in, like, are they the antithesis of what you stand for?
Well, if someone uses it for the big spending and then is typically fairly frugal, we're okay.
Yeah.
They're okay. But generally it's we just put everything on the credit card, we pay it off once a month. That sounds good. Again, sounds good in theory. And if you really nail that, it's all right. But if you're spending a little bit more because it's difficult to grasp how much is going there, then the saving, that process doesn't put you in a better position.
I'm with you. Yeah, you can lose track on like what's truly going out. You're a bit more flippant when it's on a credit card. So yeah, you're 55 days interest free and all that jazz. Like, yeah, it's great, all good. You get some points, maybe.
Exactly.
When was the last time you actually used those points?
Exactly right.
Is the other one?
For the listeners, really think about it. If you're conscious, and this is simple, if you're conscious of what's going out, you'll naturally actually save more. You don't need to be earning more. You'll save more by just keeping an eye on it.
So, I mean, it works relative to people's income and what's going up. Some people love the idea of give me some percentages in terms of what I should be saving, investing, lifestyle, discretionary versus mandatory. Do you have a bit of a guide here, or is it just far too blanket?
We try to steer clear. I mean, it's good to have a really general guide, but again, I mean, 50% max going to home is a good start. Okay. But other than that, really, it's driven by you. You need to get control of your budget by writing it out. And there's lots of good templates out there. But if you've itemized your spending, then you can say, okay, and it'll be glaringly obvious. The really big ones are the ones to look at. And so a percentage here and a percentage there, I think works well as a one size fits all. But that's where I really take challenge with people like the Barefoot Investors book. Is it's so good to wake people up. Yeah. Really, really great. But if you're saving 20% here to this bucket and 30% to this bucket, most people we met who've gone through that process, great, it got us on the right track, got us thinking about it, but it's not working anymore. Yes. Why? Because our lives were different to that.
Well said. Well said. That's exactly that. It started us here, but what worked and got you here won't get you to this next level. If you really want to put your foot down in terms of saving or investing, you've got to do something differently. Yeah, perfect. Kind of skipped over your story, so let's go back a little bit because I know you and Tash, for those that are listening, your wife, Tash, you run the business together.
We do.
You had a whole life before that, and even kids have come along.
Big time.
So take us through, like, how's your life unfolded to get you to this point?
Massive. Okay, so I went to uni in Newcastle. I grew up in Grafton.
Yeah.
Way back before that, I was born in England. We moved to Grafton, lived in sleepy 20,000 people Grafton town for till I was 18, finished school there. Yeah. And I guess for me, probably learned the value of saving. My parents didn't earn crazy money, but were really good savers, and I had a big we spend on experiences. Way before that Instagram meme was made popular, or the experiences, not things. It was all about experiences. Didn't have the material items, but we were able to travel. We had a global family. We did all sorts of fun things like that. So a lot of seeds were sown early on, I think, from a global perspective for me, which was really, I'm forever grateful for that. Uni in Newcastle was a big step up from Grafton. Yeah. It felt like the capital of the world at the time. And
the big smoke.
Yeah, the big smoke. I met Tash at uni, actually. Tash grew up in Newey.
Yeah.
And we moved to Brisbane for a couple of years. We went to Sydney. We were in Sydney for just over a decade. Yeah. Had a great time in Sydney, pre-kids, and then we had both of our kids in Sydney. All sorts of fun trying to bring kids into the world. We went through IVF. We went through all sorts of challenges around that. Thankfully, we've got through that, and very very thoughtful for everyone who's going through those types of stories. Everyone's journeys around that kind of thing can be incredibly challenging. So, we're fortunate enough to have the financial means to get through that type of thing as well. But a great experience in Sydney. That's where the career growth happened. It's where I left the corporate world, and then we started a business, which then turned into Sufficient Funds, which is now 6 years old. And we moved to Newcastle, back to Newcastle, full circle really, because we're not going to Grafton anytime soon. Sorry, Mum. But yeah, now in Newey, and the kids settled into school. It was good timing for that as well. So yeah, that's where we're at now, fully remote and enjoying the coastal life.
Excellent. It is once you've been in Sydney, your heart's probably here. You come back here sometimes, you're like, oh, I love it.
Yeah.
But it's nice to kind of come in and then dip out a little bit as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We've got a few days off in the holidays that we're thinking we might bring the kids back and do a bit more Sydney, because we're like just being here overnight. Yeah. It's like, wow, we do miss it a little bit, but the nostalgia would wear off, I think, if we get stuck in that traffic too much.
That's exactly it. Yeah, your definition for a traffic jam in Newcastle would be like mine down.
Three people at a red light, right?
And the locals are complaining like, oh, you got nothing to worry about. Don't worry.
The thing that gets me about Newey is the 4-way stop signs. They've got the 4-way stop signs everywhere and no one knows how to use them. Yeah. And probably me too. But anyway, lots of fun.
Cool, mate. So put down roots there, growing your business, which is financial planning, mortgage broking as well as part of what you offer. I love the ethos though, again, when you talk about the book and you talk about, going from insufficient funds to sufficient funds to then to this place of abundance. And we're big on that in terms of, like, I think as a wealth mindset, you're going, don't just stop at being having sufficient funds. It's like you're actually capable of a lot more.
Absolutely. And
I think that's almost a self-permission part, or that's like an ability to think a little bit bigger. And you and I probably have this where we look at clients and you go, you're actually selling yourself a little bit short on your dream. You actually are capable of a lot more, but you're playing a bit of a smaller game here. How do you take people on that journey to go, well, I can get you to sufficient funds, but I can take you further than that as well?
And I know, I mean, you're the same, right? We've got that vision for our clients naturally ends up way higher than they have for themselves, our vision for them. And we can see it. And yeah, you're right. This is that opportunity to start to think bigger, but it makes most people uncomfortable. And it is you can't just sit back and go, okay, well, what else? What else? You've got to really dig into that a little bit. So we start with a process. Before we start anything, we're focused on values and goals and really starting to unpack just what's lying there at the moment. And, as people working in finance world, when you talk about goals, the initial thing is, I want to save tax. They give you something financial, right?
Yeah.
They're
financial freedom.
Yeah, they're financial guys or gals, and they want to hear something financial, of course. Save tax, build wealth, start investing. And so, great, that's all relevant, but they're not goals. What is all of that going to facilitate? If you had all of that, what does that allow you to do? And then start to ask yourself why. And so a good starting point for anyone who's trying to unpack this themselves is really start with thinking about, well, what milestones could be coming up? Do we have anything we can celebrate? Is there anything we're trying to work towards that could make sense to? And this is before we get too far beyond sufficient, but it's just getting that first part in place.
Yeah.
And so then it's the experiences. Are you chasing any particular experiences? Is there something you thought you would do and you haven't done it yet? And if you had a bit more time or money, would you go and do that? That might be the bungee jump or the skydive. It might be 3 months in another country or whatever. But starting to unpack, give yourself permission to dream. And it could be things. Yeah, we got nothing against the material. Like if you want a brand new EV, you want to upgrade the home, cool. I mean, we've spent a lot of money on the place we live in that thing, but it provides a place to stay at home and work from home and have the family and have everyone stay. And there's so much value you can get out of that. So don't discount that idea of, okay, maybe just spending some money on something materialistic is okay.
Yeah.
And then beyond sufficient or abundance, that's the real, I mean, some prompters around those types of things. Well, what if you had all the money in the world already and you didn't need to do it? What if you had $1 billion? You can't spend $1 billion. Like just put yourself in that position and start to think, well, what would I do? You'd be bored out of your brain after you've had all the parties, bought the yachts, done all those things, you've still got money left over. So what are you going to do with it? And that even just forcing that kind of question or going back to, okay, well, when you were 5 years old, what did you dream about? Have you forgotten about something that's actually still really important? Is there something around giving or building something for someone or starting a brand new business, trying something completely different?
Yeah.
Even just these prompters start to get people, going to get the juices flowing a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's so many homogenous statements like, I want the financial freedom, or I want 10 properties in 10 years, or I want to pay more. That's all well and good. It's like you say that and you speak it into existence, and what happens when you get there? Because would you truly be fulfilled once you get there?
Yeah.
Because once you get there, you're going to move the goalposts again. And I think that's what I love. You read like Psychology of Money, for example. I think you read a lot of those wealth books, and you're like, it puts you into this place that once you've got it, now what?
That's right. And I mean, the enjoyment is the journey. As corny as that sounds, it's not the destination. It's not when you get there, because most of the time it's not what you thought it would be. But you put yourself through this process of progression.
Yeah.
And progression leads to fulfillment for most people in one way or another.
Yeah.
And, Tony Robbins probably made that famous. But when you really boil it down, it's true. We're not sitting still.
Yeah.
Improving yourself in one way or another is a good place to start.
Yeah, well said. Again, you and I get to be in front of a lot of clients, right? When you're in the coalface, you're having awesome conversations with people. But you can generally feel, and I hope this comes out the right way, you can generally feel if someone's going to take action versus the ones that you either need a little bit more coaching, or
for sure
they're not going to actually pull the trigger and make some decisions. So the way I look at it is, got clients that have got potential, but they're not going to act on it.
Yeah.
You got the clients who've got potential and they act on it, which is awesome. And you got the ones that are just action takers galore. You're like, these are the people that I want to work with more and more, for example. So let's call it like struggling, mediocre, and exceptional. I hope no one takes offense to that.
Sure.
It's just more like as a behavior. What do you see the differences between them, for example?
Yeah.
And let's say, for example, all things being equal, all on the same incomes, or like there's some commonalities between them, but the differences usually comes out in mindset and action.
Yeah, definitely. And it comes back to that thought around, I mean, even just an example of that is it's not about the size of your income, it's what you do with it, right? So we see clients earning half as much, saving twice as much as the next people. And that's okay if you're still on track and you're still enjoying life and then you're on track for all the things you want to achieve. So I think you've nailed the most important part is the action part. I think something we see in clients that are exceptional in terms of taking control and taking action is actually self-education. And it's that process of really leaning into whatever advice they're receiving. And it's even before we've met them, often it's, hey, we've read these books, we've listened to these podcasts, we've done all these things, and we got to this point where we know what we don't know, but we want more, and we know we need you. We know it's going to cost money, but we can see it's probably value. So can you just tell us a bit more about that?
Okay.
They're the clients who will achieve the most, because one thing is they've got big goals already. They've already got a bunch. Like we'll say, hey, we're going to do this session. We call it defining sufficient. We're going to dive in and talk about goals. And often when we hear is, oh, that's okay. We don't need that because we've mapped our goals already. I'm like, awesome. That's a good start. Nice. But I need to know them too. And we're going to tweak them and we're going to work through them and we're going to push you on all this stuff and understand, well, how does that fit together? But they've got something there and there's a real clarity around what they're trying to achieve, might not know exactly how to do it. And for them in their heads, that's where advice comes in. That's where a professional might be able to help or some guidance. And so, the action takers are often combined with the fact that they've self-educated, but they've got to a point. But through that advice process, and mortgage broking is the same, right? We've got people who there's lots they could learn if they want to. And it's on us to help them. I mean, for me, we try and say to people, we're going to meet you wherever you are. And that's okay if your knowledge base is, fairly low in the scheme of where we're at. None of that matters. It's a willingness to engage at that level and be open to learning. And I think on the flip side, those who will, I guess, hide their head in the sand, who ignore, who don't take action, everything we've just talked about, the opposite is really the people who will struggle the most. Is if you sit there not doing anything about it, it's going to be really hard to progress.
Is it confronting for people at this point where they go, for the ones that are struggling? I'm talking to the ones that are struggling. I talk about a bell curve, and you got that lower part of the bell curve, and they're just struggling to get the juices going. Maybe no one in their family has bought a property or bought an investment property.
Yeah.
So they're kind of breaking ground here, or
Mm-hmm.
they've got a partner who's really not on the same page. So you can't build a house off two different blueprints. You can't build a financial future off two different blueprints, for example. Or there's just like closet money behaviors where there's spending
Yeah.
on, maybe it's an addiction, maybe it's shopping, maybe it's just spur of the moment.
Yeah.
And because they're lacking that type of structure and plan, there's no accountability. It's almost like eating a bad diet and trying to train at the gym with no routine or structure. And it's like, you're not going to get any results, for example. And you're coming in here going, trust me now, like believe me later type scenario, which is I can get you there. But again, you got to meet me. You've also got to meet me halfway as well.
I think the way to really start those juices flowing, if they're just not, is try and connect to something that matters. And for us, we always come at this angle of life. Let's get a little bit, let's put the money away for a second. Money is a scary thing. It can be very stressful. As soon as you know, it creates overwhelm. You've analyzed everything. You're paralyzed by it. Just put it away. Let's go back to life. Forget about all the money stuff. What are you actually working towards? What do you care about? Is it family? Is it adventure? Is it health? What else matters? And what do you value? And then what are some of these other big things coming up? And if you can go, okay, well, if we could get our money plan working and it was going to then directly allow us to do more of this travel with the family or a bit time off and maybe dial it back to 4 days a week, whatever that looks like. If you can connect that, all of a sudden the people who were saying, oh, you know, this money idea, I just don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I can help myself. I'm not going to act on that, because most of the time they're not acting because they can't see why. And so if you uncover all of that and just say, okay, well, let's just find one thing that really makes you tick. What is it right now? What's coming up in the next 6 to 12 months? If we could just do that, how would you feel? And all of a sudden, okay, great. So if I could do this and this and this, and then maybe some more of that, and we can start to bring it all together, then for most people, and you know, there's different reasons for not engaging and not doing anything about it, and it might just be that life gets in the way. But for most people, if they can make a connection to there's so much value in us living the life we want to live, then they can take action on that. I think most people can get there. It's just about peeling it back a little bit and finding that one item.
Cool. So we take that extreme and then you go to the other extreme, which is your top performers, exceptional, they're taking action. Is it a matter of like now meeting you guys on a regular basis? Is it a matter of like visualizing? Is it a matter of talking about it? Like how do they then become absolute weapons financially?
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think it's all still about achieving balance, right? If they're really enjoying themselves, because you can go the wrong way with that attitude too, right? You can start to save more and more and more. And that's great if you're achieving great things financially, but it's not if you're going to blow out in the meantime. Okay. I mean, we think about it in business, right? We can run as hard as we want, but it's not going to last forever.
Yes.
And so same with clients who are saving and saving and saving. Are you stopping? Are you enjoying yourself? Are you doing too much overtime and it's just running you down? Have you got the other pillars of wealth looked after, in particular things like family and health, right? It's not just about the money. Yeah. And so, but if they've got all of that in balance, they're the real one. They're the ones who are really killing it. Yeah, okay. And so the money plan can tend to work in the background. And so we are catching up. I mean, for most clients, we do a formal annual review. So life happens in between that, right? Absolutely. And so we're always on call. Yeah. That's really critical, but we're annually reviewing, just stopping and giving a chance to go, okay, what's happened? Where are you up to? What have you ticked off? And formally just take that time to go, okay, you guys gave us this list 12 months ago and you've nailed half of it already. You bought the house, you've upgraded the home, you're already pregnant, you're doing all these things. And all of a sudden, wow, you see some progress. Yeah. And it might be time, if you ticked off a few milestones like that, to do what we call redefining sufficient. And that's that kind of process of going, okay, we defined all these things we think we wanted to achieve. We've now ticked a few off. Yeah. If you tick a bunch of goals off, the biggest risk there is you're treading water. And so stopping and just saying, okay, let's remove that from the list We highlight it green in front of them. It's gone by the time we see them next.
Beautiful.
And then you've got a new list, and let's look at that freshly. Is it okay? What else? What's missing now? And take it from there.
Yeah, okay.
One of the tricks we use, and this is something for people at home as well, really just thinking about, well, be the annoying toddler. Ask yourself why. You think you want to do something? Why? Yeah. Why? Go deeper and deeper each time until you actually get somewhere. Not that you do with the 3-year-old, but when you really get somewhere. And that might be, hey, I want to go to Brazil. Great. Why? And it's not just a travel goal. We want to travel. Okay, where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? Brazil. And why? And all of a sudden you've uncovered that they've got heritage there, and part of the family's never met 3 kids they've got. And all of a sudden, when they're seeing it, they're smelling it, they're tasting it, these ideas come to light, and it's a huge, huge motivator that they'd forgotten about. And so, awesome. Good tip for people at home, hopefully.
Appreciate it. Thanks. One of the chapters in your book speaks to my heart, and
I think I know where we're going. I'm worried.
Don't be worried. And this notion of fire, I feel like it's really got momentum. So fire, we've spoken a few times, a couple of guests in the past. Financial independence, retire early. So a bit of a movement. There's a couple of well-known names. So please, we're not taking any pot shots. We're just saying, look, this is a strategy that's come up. So I think you strip back all your expenses and you live off a fairly meager, I'd call it a meager amount. Personally, where I take offense to that is, why are you dimming your lights just to get by when you're capable of so much more? Like you've got an ability to contribute in a workplace, or you've got ability to contribute to clients or society, for example. Your kids then become the beneficiaries of you putting your foot to put it down a little bit more, and you can build more that enables more people as well.
Yeah.
So when you kind of just strip this back and go, I'm going to live a modest life. Don't get me wrong, it's endearing. I think it's a wonderful trait. But why are you playing a small game?
Yeah.
And you call yours F-Fire. I love it. Take me through, are you anti-fire, or what's your thought? What's the sentiment here?
I'm anti the core version, the hardcore version of fire, which is like save 70% of your income after tax and keep your spreadsheet and track it till that day that you can finally retire. And I mean, I'm not in any way against the notion of financial independence. Yes. And really that comes back to that idea of what we were just talking about, abundance or beyond sufficient, is really knowing that your income has been completely replaced by investments. And that's a fantastic place to be. The notion of retire early is the scary one.
Yeah.
Right? Not a bad goal to have, but stop and just check yourself for a second. Are you working in some soul-sucking job that you absolutely hate for the next 10 years just so you can stop? Why don't you just chill for a second, zoom out a bit, go, well, how about I find a vocation that I do really enjoy and work and earn and enjoy the process? And that's where we sort of said, like, sufficient funds is a very cool alternative to fire, in that you can enjoy yourself now. You can be on track. You know everything's flowing. If you get these boxes ticked and you follow that process, then all of a sudden you're living now, but you've got your eyes on the future as well, but you're not trying to escape something. And that's what fire at its core looks like from the outside in. There are, don't get me wrong, I mean, there's lots of good versions of fire. It's developed a lot now. Yeah. It's, most people, if we were having a conversation with them now, they'd probably agree with most of what we're saying in the fire community. It's just there's a hardcoreness around it that at its core level, most people just can't do it. And it's you're setting people up to fail.
Where are you going to live on such a small income? How are you going to get by? How are you socially just connect with people and, I don't know, health and well-being? I go into and I tried. I'm like, am I missing something here? Because a few people asked me about it. I'm like, am I missing something here? But I took offense to retire early, because every time I see people retire, I just see them going downhill, because 1, they're not using their brain. 2, they're losing their social connection. 3, they stopped working full-time and now they become a retiree full-time. It's like, that's not an overnight switch that's a transition. And retirement. What are you going to do when all your other mates are working and you've retired early? You're not playing golf with everyone, mate. They're all still working. And so,
but you ask, when you ask someone, okay, well, what are you going to do? Oh, but I won't stop. Okay, well, that's not the goal, right? You were actually trying to retire. It sounded good, but you weren't going to stop. You were going to do something else. And that's great. That's financial independence.
Correct.
Right? You can slow down on the work hours. I don't have a client who doesn't want to slow down work one day. We're not talking about working till we die. It's very different, but it's about balance. And financial freedom, when you unpack that, that's a great sounding term, right? But you start to unpack that, it does mean choice. It means flexibility. It means all these things that are very admirable. And that's what you want to be working towards, what most people would achieve and want to achieve. But the second you slow down and stop, I agree, you might not be here for long, which is the scary part.
So if we go into like financial freedom, you've just rattled off a few things there as well, which is, again, when you and I ask the questions of people, so why are you buying property, or whether you want a financial plan, for example, a money plan, and they're going financial freedom, it's all those things, isn't it? It's the ability to spend time with my family, choose to work in a role that I truly love, or work just a little bit less, for example. I'm not chained to a job that I hate to pay my mortgage, and I'm slave to emails and the computer, and they're just stacking the deck in their favor just a little bit more.
Yeah. And if you look at it as the most extreme, it's the world's biggest emergency fund. By building investments, if everything really hits the fan, it's not just that 3 months expenses you might be keeping in the bank, it's the whole lot that you could really utilize if something really went wrong. But then you've got an incredible launch pad for choice, right? Flexibility, time with the family, all these things that may or may not matter to you. But if they do, you've got room to move.
Yeah, cool. Thanks very much. The framework in your book I really loved as well. So you just take us through for people that haven't read it yet. And I know you're very generous, so you got a few copies to give away. So
for sure.
We'll talk about that at the end. But take me through your 5-step framework and what that entails.
So Insufficient Funds is the starting point, right? So it's where everyone is really when we meet them, when they start reading the book. It's not that you've got nothing in the bank, but it's that idea of it's not all flowing, and how do you get it there? Sufficient funds is the goal at the start. We can take you beyond later, but right now let's get you to sufficient funds. And so there's 5 Ds. It starts with defining. So it's define, declutter, develop, defend, and deliver. Define is getting super clear on goals. And we probably unpacked that a bit already, but really getting clear on those goals and the values and everything you're working towards, so that informs the plan. Yeah. What we're trying to do here is you're trying to connect your money decisions to the life that you want to live. And when you think about that, it's always got to be led by life. Money facilitates it. That's it. Once you're clear there, you can start to then build out, and the declutter process is removing the crap, removing the waste from your spending plan. So it's the budget, it's the categories that we talked about earlier. It's creating that spending plan that's really aligning your day-to-day spending, the basic stuff, with that idea of what you're trying to achieve. And really the ultimate goal there is spending as little as you possibly can on things you don't care about, on anything you don't value, so you can go nuts on everything that you do. And you can actually create some freedom within that, with that attitude. So that's decluttering. Developing is where we start to go, okay, you've got some money left over in that budget, and cost of living's tough, right? But most people have a little bit left over. Yeah. And our clients, sometimes they've got quite a lot left over. It depends on where you're at. But if it's a couple of $1,000s a month, you've got to decide where to put that, right? Does it go into the mortgage? So we call this the 4 stacks of sufficient funds. So part of develop is strategy. 4 stacks: debts, savings, investment, super.
Beautiful.
Are you paying off the home loan? If you've cleared out the bad debts, hopefully you're not sitting on credit cards. Obviously that stuff has to come first. Yeah. We're not
That's
too...
like a debt snowball type scenario.
Yeah, exactly. And so really you're ending up with a home loan, which is not bad debt. Yeah. That's got you into the place you live in. You might have investment debt. You're probably not channeling too much into that if you've got a home loan for tax purposes. But does it go there at all? How much stays in the bank? Everyone needs a good emergency fund, whether that's 3 months of your expenses or more or less, depending on how secure you are or how many dependents rely on your income, those types of things. You probably want a bit of cash sitting aside for the next holiday or whatever else is coming up short term. But really, that's all you need in cash, in savings. The next step is, well, then we're investing. So are you leveraging against the home to buy property? Are you going into the share market? Are you doing a bit of both? You're trying to save something for the kids maybe in the future when they're 21, you might gift them some money. How are you approaching that? That's long term, so it's probably better not to keep that in the bank. And if you're able to invest, well, usually something should be going into super, no matter how old you are. And so with those 4 stacks, most of our clients, most people listening, I can tell you guaranteed you've probably got 2 of them, if not 3 or even 4 that are relevant to you right now. And so that's the strategy that you're building, and that's the develop part. Defend is not just having an emergency fund, it's also having other fallbacks. So really critically things like your personal insurances, when you're borrowing money, when you've got dependents, when you rely on your income, even as basic as, you know, the 25-year-old who's single, you rely on that 50, 60, 100 grand income. You should protect it just like you protect your car and your house and everything else.
Can I just say that is such, like, to me, I'm like, it's not lost on me. Anyone that's working in PAYG role, I'm like, literally, you are one pen flick away from losing your income. That I mean, they do a restructure in your business, and generally we're working with, you know, white collar execs, for example. Yeah. I'm like, dude, you get one restructure, you're gone. That income's gone. And sometimes the roles that they're in are so specialist that you just can't pick up a role overnight.
Or you're sick.
Right.
Or injured.
Correct.
Or something, you know, comes out of it. And yeah, I mean, white collar, I mean, we work with a lot of medical professionals and a lot of nurses, a lot of teachers. Even those roles, you're on your feet. It's manual. If you're immobile even for a little while, and think surgeons at the extreme level, you lose a finger, your career might have finished. And so things like that, just protecting that. So the defend portion is not just having all of that, but what happens if you actually use it? And so, and this part, so we've gone like adding kids, doing all these things. So we've talked through the stages of starting a family and how to prep for that. That's all in the book. Those steps that you need to think about, how much is it going to cost at each of those steps? How do we balance all these fluctuations in our income through this crazy time? And then deliver is just bringing it all together. Yeah. Bringing it all together, making it flow, staying motivated, staying on track. That idea of redefining sufficient, always revisiting your goals, progress, motivation, momentum, that side of things.
I love it. So I think we all thrive off a bit of a framework or a model where we can just see, take me to the next step and the next step after that as well. It gives the brain loves a bit of a cohesive framework, mate. So well done.
For sure. Thank you. Yeah, it's not a difficult read, and it's not the world's longest book. Yeah. What we found is, I don't think I could have done a longer book, to be honest, in the end, Aaron. I got to the point I was like, this is enough, but I actually don't think we're wasting space either. So hopefully we just packed enough in there to get people, like, really ultimately as hopefully go and DIY your own plan. Make it happen. If you get stuck, of course you can reach out, but hopefully you can go and just nail it yourself.
That's exactly. It's almost even more powerful when people can do it themselves because you've got so much more skin in the game versus delegating it. And then you go, well, if that didn't work, then it's their fault, versus when you take ownership of that.
Yeah, you're in it together.
Mate, 100%. That's what we're all about. Like the podcast, for when you and I talk, people only can only take so much action, and we can only get them to take so much action. They've got to actually want it themselves. And that's what I generally find. That top 20% of our clients are the ones that are highly motivated. They're the ones that are coming to us going, I'm ready to buy again, let's go again. Whereas for those tail-ended clients, we're going, hey, mate, you've got the equity, you've got the borrowing capacity, we should be doing something. In 5 years' time, we're having the same conversation. Like, it's such a shame because you'd be in a much different or better place if the team around you was highly motivated, highly coordinated, thinking bigger for you, so not projecting their own insecurities as well. I'm just going, mate, we all want a bigger and better, brighter future. Come on the journey with us. We don't want to leave anyone behind.
Big time. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm excited, mate. I really, like I said, we could talk for much longer. But if they want a piece of James, they can read the book.
Of course.
And Tash, I think the essence will really come through for a lot of people, and they'll connect with the message you're putting out there. Because I personally hate this idea of like insufficient funds. Like that notion to me just conjures. We've been there. I remember when I started the business, I'd be tapping the card for a coffee man, just praying that there'd be some money on it. Yeah. And I think he gets that point where you see a decline at the shops, you're like, never again.
It's a motivator in itself,
isn't it?
Right? It's never a stressful place to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, we want people far, far away from that as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a fun place to be in. Look, there's no doubt if you're doing it tough, you've got to put your hand up. Yeah. Struggling, suffering in silence. No one can hear you. No one can see you. Got to put your hand up, whether that's, you know, the mortgage a little bit tougher, the burden there. Cash flow, it'd be like a business that's hemorrhaging on cash flow, not reaching out to the point that it gets too far, that you can't turn the boat around. You've got to reach out nice and early, and that takes someone a little bit brave to speak up. But yeah, do not suffer in silence as well.
Yeah, good to get a coach in your corner in all those areas.
100%. Yeah, sure. You speak openly. You speak about a money plan. I mean, we talk about a loan strategy. Buyers agents talk about a property strategy. So you start to put the three together, and they all really should be in sync. Your money strategy should be dictating your loan strategy. Your loan strategy should be dictating your property strategy. And if you kind of piece that together, that's a really good cohesive blueprint for like, where do we want to get to? Why do we want to achieve it? And how are we going to do it?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So like I said, we've got a couple of copies of the book. So if you've loved this episode, drop us a DM. We love when people reach out to us. And what we're going to do is if you share the episode, let us know so we can share, maybe give you a friend a copy of the book as well. And that's what we're about. So James, I know you've been super generous with your time and your energy and give you some copies of the book. We just want this message in more Australians' hands, in more Australians' ears for these episodes as well. And if you loved it, like I said, share it with a friend, tell someone, and we'll look forward to talking to you next time.